Welcome back. Now in this video we're going to get into inspecting our aircraft and making any needed corrections. And now in doing this I want to show you how to do also a cut list. Now you are more than welcome to do this your own way, and one way is of course to just mentally note these corrections. Another way is to write them down, and both of those have their negatives. They don't really have much benefit. Writing down, of course, is better than trying to remember, and cut lists is the one that is the better option out of all of them. And I'm going to show you why. Well, as we saw before in an earlier video, you can put your mouse over the preview window of FSX and you can zoom in, and then you can click and drag. And right now I can see my nose line, and I really don't like that. I don't really know why I even did that. That just looks awful. And I can try to look at my windows here, but that's probably going to be better to do in FSX. I can see they look pretty good to me. And I can pan around and take a look, and the tail is hard to see from here also. It looks okay out here, but probably not so much inside. Now on the underbelly, I can see those green stripes near the wing. And that's fine for some people. For me, I don't really like that. My original paint, I left them as is. But this is going to be one thing that I'm going to want to correct, and in doing it the way we did it. But I want to see exactly where I need to correct these. I don't want to overcorrect. And I don't want to cut out where they are on top. I just want to cut out the line that's on the bottom only. So in doing a cut list, it's really nothing more than doing a bunch of screenshots. So let me show you how to do a cut list real quick. Let's get one started here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to find a spot on the aircraft that needs fixing, like that green line right there. And I'm going to press print screen while I hold this in position, and print screen on the keyboard. So hit that. Not your print screen that you have for your screenshots of, set up for FSX. And after I've done that, I'm going to now go back into Photoshop here, and I'm going to say Control N for new. And you'll notice since I hit print screen, it's going to default to whatever resolution that your screen is set up for. So if your resolution is different than mine, you're going to see different values. No matter what they are, keep them as is and hit OK. So right now we have our data, or what we just copied, on our clipboard. So we're just going to press Control V and paste that. So there's one. And right off the bat, what I'm doing here is I'm making an actual visual image here so I can better see it for reference later. Just like our layers and our paints, we want to name these. So I'm going to say line belly. You could even say something like line belly hide, to give yourself a reminder of what you wanted to do or what you were thinking when you saw that. Because a lot of times you're not going to remember this. So that's very key. So let me bring back FSX and let's see what else we can get right here. Now the nose also I can see here. So I'm going to just do the same thing here. I'm just going to press print screen, get out of there, go back to my PSD here, and Control V, paste that. And once again, in the layer, I'm going to rename that nose. And for me, that's the only thing that the window is telling me, or that's the only thing I'm going to be able to get from the preview window. From here on out, I do want to go inside, and I'm going to go right into the actual program and do some tests from here. Now, first thing I do know is I do know that I want to get another screenshot of the nose. So get myself lined up here and hit print screen. And once you're inside here, make sure your PSD is selected and press Control V, and that will paste that. Now here I'm going to name this nose side. I know exactly which one this is. And again, we can see right now what it is. We don't need it named, but the reason why we're naming that is because once we get a lot of layers, we're not going to know which one is just by the preview. We're going to have a lot of images that might look the same. So once you've done that, you can go back into FSX. And again, I want to go right to my other area here that I'm aware of, and that is that underbelly line. So get myself in a position here, have something in the shot for reference, and print screen. And once again, we want to press Ctrl V to paste our screenshot. And I'm going to call this FWD for forward line. And I'm also going to make a note of what side I was on. And this is the left side, so left. Now, once again, we do as much as we can now so we're not guessing later. I can't really emphasize that one enough, but it's one of those things that if you're not just going to take my word for it, then you're going to have to learn the hard way and why we're doing it that way. So back into FSX we go. Alright, now as I'm doing this, I do want to keep an eye out on other things, and not just what I saw in that preview window. Everything looks okay. You see the underground or the shadow on the bottom half of that fin. Now the tail jack there, or tail stand, or whatever you call that, that should be dirtier. Doesn't look bad. I do like the gold contrast difference between the dark bottom. And that little squiggle in the line, I'll tell you right now, good luck getting rid of that. Now, what happened to my door? Well, I'll tell you, I forgot this, and I can't believe I missed it, but you can see that it's in the fuselage door outlines and its door hinge, and the belly fairing bottom. I went ahead and removed that. And some of these things I'm leaving out of the video because the video is going to be very long as it is, so you don't need to see me erase something. I'd rather have some things in here that are going to be very educational and show you how to correct some very needed things. Now here, what do we have here? Well, let's get a good screenshot of this. But in doing so, I want to try to match this up as square as I can on my elevator. And you can see the lines are coming through right about the correct place. So I really probably just have to worry about the end. And let's paste this, and let's call this tail. So hopefully by now you're getting a hang of why we're doing this, or an understanding of why we're doing this. Now, my APU vane, I don't like how dirty that is, and that's because I have such a clean fuselage. Now, if I had a dirtier fuselage, it might look a little better and blend in better. Or maybe if I dirtied up the outside of it, but I think I'm just going to take a screenshot of this and clean that up a little bit, lessen the dirt. And paste that, Control V, and call this one APU vane. Good enough for me. And back again we go. Alright, what else do we have here? More hinge dirt that again I cleaned up already, but have not introduced that into the sim yet. The line overall looks really great. The lettering looks good. And you can see some signs of bump mapping still, because I'm using the default. Now, the rivets look really good. I am liking those. The only thing I don't like is how smooth the fuselage looks. That just needs bump mapping in a bad way. Now, the bottom door here, let's check out that. You can see our light source is coming from the nose, so that bevel we put on there is perfect. And the lettering looks good. I could make out the M and the O over the green line. That little bit of drop shadow. The flap guard dirt, that looks good. That oxidized look, that looks really good. And I do want to get another shot of this line, because as you can see underneath that door there, or the wheel well, I can see a glimpse of it, and I don't want that. So I'm going to go up here actually into the wing and take a screenshot of this. Whoops, go down a little bit here. And there we go. Now I have a much better reference point of where to cut that. And paste that again, Control V, and I'm going to call this one, let's say rear line right. And that's pretty good for those two. I'm going to go ahead now and just take a second and I'm going to arrange these so I have the lines together. And you can do the same thing for the rest of them. Noses are together. My belly line I want to have up here with these three. And you could even go ahead and create your own group. So I can call this, let's say, my belly line. And now I can select this, control click on these two, and drag them into my belly line group. So now I have them once again organized. And one more time back into FSX. Now again, I want to take a really careful look around, but not on your time. So I actually already did, and I'm just going to go over the major trouble areas. But some things I do want to remind you of is if you are painting with effects, to keep an eye on those like door seams, your windows, make sure your light source is in the right location and it looks right to you. The nose there, that's all the rivets, they kind of do give it the illusion of a space shuttle nose. And again, I might want to tone them down a little bit, but I'm going to leave them as is, at least till we get to bump mapping. Now, there right there, you see, I don't know if you see it in the middle there, you see a little bit of a seam going through. And that is the area for the line that everybody's having problems with. And it is a problem. I'm not going to lie, it is a problem. That line right there, of course, is my line. And let's get in here a little closer. Let's actually take a good look at this. Now I can see a little bit of bump mapping into this line, so I can see maybe a little on the edges that kind of blend in a little bit. If you didn't do your own windows, your window right here is going to look terrible. And that's probably the bigger place to where you could notice the problem. It's where most people are posting their screenshots about it. So as you can see here, my windows blend in much better doing it the way we did it. They're lined up correctly. Now there you could almost see through the fuselage right there. And I'm seeing a little bit of, whoa, let's move around here, get a better look. I'm seeing a dirt difference almost, kind of like a stain seeping through the crack. So we'll look at that in a few minutes. And I'm trying to find a good place for a screenshot here, but I also want to continue looking around, make sure I didn't miss anything. My light looks good. The line, green line, those look great. Nice and smooth, not rasterized and all pixelated. And the rivets look okay. Way too smooth. I hate seeing the light come off the fuselage that smooth. And our bottom door plate looks great. Alright, so let's get the screenshot and get into Photoshop and start fixing some things. And once again, we're just going to Control V and paste that, and I'm going to call this one line. Once again, it may be deceiving as far as looking at this image, which side is front, which side is rear. So just in case, and to keep it as simple as possible for myself, I'm going to actually say line FR. And to me, that's just a shortcut that I've been using to say that the first letter means that the left side is F or forward, and the last or the right side being rear, being the right letter being rear. You could take this a step further if you want, press T for the text tool, and you could even say FWD space and then rear, or however way you want to do it. The key thing is so you can look back at this later and know what it is. So me personally, I don't need to do that or want to do that, but the key is to develop your own system and go with that. Alright, now that we've done that, go ahead and exit out of FSX. And we're going to want to open up our files here to see where the problem lies. So the first thing I want to investigate is this line. So let's kill this right off the bat. So I'm going to double click on my Photoshop background here, and I want to open up I can open up either my DDS or my PSD. I'm going to click on my PSD, and I'm going to control click and click on Fuse 2. Because it's going to be one of these to where our problem lies. So let's open them too. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually just take these and I'm going to butt them up somewhat side by side. You're not going to be able to get them perfect, but close enough. And let me look again at this image here and look at that line. Look where it's coming through that particular window, and then look at your actual PSD, and you'll be able to find that exact window. And this right here, the bottom here being our left side. Be sure that you're in at 100% and do the same thing for PSD number 2 or Fuse 2. And when we drag them up and we match them up, there doesn't seem to be anything to go on here. It doesn't seem like anything's wrong. I'm going to go into full screen here and just put a couple other things to rest. I want to take another look at this line, be sure that we didn't have a line. I'm going to zoom into 200%. And let's take a real careful look up and down here, but not just in it. I'm also going to go into my channels and my alpha. And here I want to make sure I don't have any kind of dark blemish or dark line here. And everything looks fine. Exit that full screen. And I want to do the same thing to here. And once again, this is fuselage 1, so I want to focus on the right hand side here. I'm going to zoom way in on this one. And this little line that we're seeing here is nothing. That of course is just the thin line that separates your workspace from your image. Very hard to tell them two apart. It's just something through experience. Now if you look up here, the paint as it fades in, now I'm zoomed into full 100% here. So we're starting to see a little bit of a possibility to why. If we look at our alpha channel is fine. So let's once again, I'm going to get out of this, F twice. Now since I'm going to be needing these in a minute to fix my lines or to paste our corrections from our master, I'm just going to get these zoomed out here and back to the RGB channel. And I'm going to then just minimize these. Now, just to be safe, I'm going to bring in our fuselage DDS files. So number 1 and number 2, open. Now, just in case something happened during the save, I want to go through the same steps here. But here, I really just want to go right into full screen, and I want to zoom right in to what could be the problem, and 200%, and let's check out our line here. Once again, we saw that the windows were perfect. You can't do much better with your windows than what we did. So the alpha channel looks fine, the RGB channel looks fine, and once again that is looking perfect. But again, you just want to be thorough, and that's what I'm trying to show you. I'm not trying to waste your time here. To me, it's wasting my time, but it's not wasting my time if I'm getting a point across. And knowing for sure what it is the key important part. 200%. And again, I'm seeing this little blemish right there. But if we look at our master, I'm going to get out of this full screen. Or you could even just go ahead and increase the size of one of these canvases and drag one over to the other. Let's do that just so you know how. With either one of these selected, I'm just going to go up here and say canvas size, and I'm going to choose pixels from my drop down. Now our height is fine, we want to leave that, but I'm pretty sure, let's see, 4096 times 2 is what, 8000? 192. Hit OK. And now I'm going to zoom way out here. And I'm going to drag this one over here. Whoops, it's locked. Let me unlock that. I'm going to drag this one over here and to that side there. And I'm going to bring in our other one here. And I'm just going to butt them up. Just for a second so I can see exactly where the problem might lie. I can go ahead now, control click on one so I can find that seam. And let's go into full screen here and 200%. So I'm going to deselect that line now that I have it. And now we can kind of focus right in on here where we're seeing that little bit of a blemish. I'm going to nudge this just 1 pixel each way, make sure that I'm all set here. And if you look at it, if you really look, I know you're not going to see it in the video, but right here we're starting to see where that dark line is. Okay? Now, is that because of our paint kit? Is it because of our actual paint? Well, that doesn't make much sense, but we are seeing a definite valid difference here. Get out of that full screen. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and select our bad boy here, our cut list, and I'm going to zoom into 100%, control spacebar and click. And again, this line right here is looking to me like it's probably something to do with the weathering. Or it could also be part of the spec layer or even the bump alpha. Okay, so there's so many different things here, and the reason why I want to show you this and wanted you to see this way is because I want you to be able to understand how to troubleshoot. Being able to help yourself is probably the most powerful thing there is. Who wants to waste time posting something than waiting days for an answer, even if you're going to get an answer? So I'm going to go ahead and open up my master. I want to take a look at the master now and try to find this line. So our fuse master and open. And if we look at the master, let's go into full screen. And we go up to our guides here so we can find our line. I'm going to control click on front, and then I'm going to zoom right into this line. And let's see if we can find this again. Once again, I want to go to 200% and deselect that line. And right off the bat, I'm seeing it. Do you see the line through here? Let's go down the side here. Now it's not that bad, but it's enough to really stand out here and there. I can clearly see the lightness to the dark here. There's definitely a shade difference. So let's go back up to the fuselage here. And I'm definitely seeing this line, and this is right around the area to where, actually right about here is the area that we're seeing in the cut list image. So go into your aerodynamic dirt, and I want you to take the opacity and crank that up to 100%. Aha. Well, this is clearly going to be a problem for light colored paints. Even dark colored paints, as you can see down here, we're seeing this line. So again, it's nothing you did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. What we have to work with here just isn't right. It's not correct, and we need to either fix that or create our own dirt like I showed you. Personally, I would say create your own dirt, because the more experience you get with doing that, the better. So what can you do to fix this? Well, it's not going to be a perfect thing, I don't think, because what I'm seeing here is this was probably multiple sections, and it was just one copied over to the next section, and so on and so on. So it was probably created 4096 and then just moved over and moved over. So here's the beginning of our aerodynamic dirt. If we go to the front to where it starts, we might see the same area here matching up with the area of our line, or where the problem starts. So you can try to compare that way, but it's not really about posting blame. It's really just about figuring out where it came from, if it was us, and so on, so we don't do it again. Right off the bat here, I'm going to go ahead and try to fix it. I'm going to press R for the blur tool, which is right here, And this is the only way that I could really think of trying to fix this. Again, personally, I wouldn't waste my time trying to fix it. I would just create my own. But if you just want to try to fix it, you can try to blur out this line. So once again, the choice is going to be up to you, how you deal with the aerodynamic dirt. There are other things you can do. You can actually try to just go ahead and stretch one section of that dirt along your whole fuse. Let me show you what I mean. If I go back to 100% here, and I just draw a selection around, let's stay within our boundaries here. I'm going to just go ahead and select a portion of this right about there. Now I'm going to press Control-Shift-J, and that's going to cut out that section. And I'm going to go ahead and shut the visibility off for the normal dirt. So now you can clearly see where the dirt boundaries are. Now to make sure I don't have any kind of, I'm not duplicating this, dirt, I'm going to just press Control-T for transform, and I'm going to bring this over to the end, and I'm going to bring this up top, and same with the bottom here. And then I'm going to drag this whole thing so it covers the entire length of my fuselage. Now for what it is, for what this dirt layer is, this is more than fine. This is not going to look bad on your paint. So I'm going to hit Enter to save that, and I'm going to bring my opacity back down to 25%. And that, for the most part, is probably going to be the easiest way to deal with that color difference that we saw. Once again, I want to find my line here, my center line, and zoom in to 200%, and deselect that with Control-D. So, as you can see, there's plenty of dirt still there. It doesn't hurt anything. If you want to, go ahead and press Control-J to duplicate that layer maybe. Again, just like we showed you before, or we covered before, there's a ton of different ways you can duplicate this, and now our aerodynamic dirt looks pretty good. Whatever way you decide to do it, this is, again, the easiest way to deal with the dirt. But for myself and for my clean livery, I'm going to just go ahead and kill all of these that I duplicated. And I'm just going to take this name here. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to put that into my new layer. And I'm going to delete the old one. Now I feel the need to make sure that I go over this one quick more time. But the problem that people are having aren't always the same problems. Now I've fielded this line issue a trillion times for different people, and I've fixed it for, I'm pretty sure, everybody that has had it. Now the first thing you want to make sure is when you're doing your initial dragging over of things, make sure that you have no feather on your marquee or your selection. So do this by, you can select the selection tool, make sure you have 0 feather. But also go up to Select and Refine Edge and make sure there are nothing here, like all zeros. You want all zeros there. Okay? So be sure of that. Make sure whatever method that you're using or whatever guides you're using are big enough or bigger. Okay? You can always sort them out later, and you could always move them a pixel left or right if you need to. But as long as they are the same size or bigger. Also be sure to check the regular problem areas. The side area is number 1, and don't just check it at, again, the normal percent or zoom factor. Make sure you're in about 200%. Now don't just check this when it's a PSD, but also check it when it's a DDS. I've pointed out a few times on the forums that once this is flattened, that's when the line appears, and sometimes after you save as DDS, some weird things happen as well. I'll show you an example of that. Now right here, if you look, this is my original paint, and this is a problem with one of the DDS files. If you look here, look at the window, it seems like the very last pixel here is shifted over or shifted down. So it looks a little crunched. And if you really zoom in here, if you look at this very far edge, once again, its color difference from the rest may not catch your eye right away, but that is a line right there that you're going to see in your paints. Okay? So be sure to look for this after you save as DDS if you're having problems. Now if you're having this problem, I've suggested to some people that what I've done to fix their problem is I've duplicated their layer and shifted the bottom one over a pixel. So in those cases we haven't gone this far, it wasn't flattened yet, or it wasn't a DDS file yet, and the line had appeared. So once it's a DDS file, or however way, let me show you a quick way to fix that. I'm going to just make a selection of this layer. Actually, I'm going to duplicate this layer by pressing Ctrl J. Now I'm going to make a selection of the layer, and with the marquee tool selected, I'm going to move my selection over a pixel, one nudge. Now I'm going to inverse that selection, Ctrl Shift I, and just delete that one pixel area. So now if I shut off my bottom layer, you'll see that now I have nothing more than a big space there. Now with that bottom layer, take that layer, make sure the movement tool is selected, and nudge this over once. Now it seems like a lot of work, I know, but this is one way I've fixed that problem. So do be sure the line is selected right, do be sure that you inspect and re-inspect, and make sure that on Fuse 1 that you're checking the right side, and be sure to check the alpha channels. Now one other thing that you want to make sure of, and this is something that I've seen a few times now, if you go into your actual PMDG folder, and for the 900 and the 800, the files are in your PMDG 800 NGX folder. If you go into your texture common, and if you're still having these problems, do make sure you check out the bump mapping. Now I do my own bump mapping, so I didn't always see this, but if you open up your, let's say, your Fuse 2 bump, do make sure you also check for lines here. Okay, so again, I don't know when these lines are appearing, how they're appearing, if it's because of DDS or flattening, but they are appearing. So do make sure this is all blue along the side here. Do make sure your alpha channel also is right. So what I do here is I sample a nice clean gray just to be sure here, and then with my brush tool and a big enough brush head, I will click and go all the way down to the bottom, and I make sure that I stay right on the edge and shift click. Now I'm sure to fill in this edge and do the same thing for the other edge. But do check out these sides here. Do zoom in here and check out the sides. The bump mapping is one of the bigger ways that I see people end up with problems along their windows or their fuselage DDS files matching up. And if you're still having problems, well, come to the forum, post it, and we can take a look at it and collectively hopefully answer your problem. Alright, so moving along, I'm going to get out of full screen here and shrink this back down. Going back into our cut list, let's take a look. We no longer need this DDS open, so I'm going to close that and choose no to save it. Same thing with this DDS file, no longer need it. So this one right here, I'm going to just shut off its visibility. I do not want to kill this. Just in case your changes don't go right, you want to be able to have a backup source so you can compare shots later. When you're back in the sim, you want to be able to go to the same exact area that you took the last screenshot and take another one for your comparison. So if I took one of my right side, I want to be sure that I take the next one of my right side. So shut that off, and now we're looking at the belly line. So I'm going to expand this and take a look here, go through my different images. Alright, so back into our master we go. I'm going to go ahead and just drag this box out here just a little bit, zoom in, and I just want to go ahead and fix the line where it is. So from our images in our cut list, the bottom one really doesn't do me that much. I can see a quick reference of it, and that's all I really need for this particular thing. I could see where the line goes in. I don't have to see the wings. What I'm looking for right now is I can see this red line. And if you also look here, we have a perfect target area as we do up here. So we know which red line we're talking about. We know we're not talking about this red line, we're talking about this red line. So looking here, I can say that right around that red line, all the way back until, and let's go to our rear line here. And this is showing me right to our, now we're within the wing here. So right around past the APU vane, or flat plate, excuse me, we can see that we need to cut it right around, right past this set of rivets. So once again, I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to say our line is coming out, that we want to hide it past this area. So from here to here, we don't want to show. So let's go back into full screen, FF, and zoom in here, say about 100%. Now I'm going to deselect that with Control D. And right now, if you notice, our path is selected here. If we click on it each time we're selecting it and deselecting it. Now again, be sure that you have the actual brown stripe selected and not the green stripe. So on our brown stripe here, with the path selection tool, or right now with the whole path selected, normally you would see every anchor point, but we don't have one right here, so we need to add one. So if you go to a pen tool, you're going to see a flyout that has Add Anchor Point tool. So you want to select that. And when you come down to your path, watch the cursor as it hovers over it, and you're going to see that plus. So now we can click and add an anchor point, and by itself, with just this anchor point, if we were to adjust this now, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to move everything left and right of that anchor point. And we don't want that. We want to just create a separate area here to where we're going to be overlapping and covering that green line. So don't worry if that didn't make sense. It's going to make sense now. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z. And once again, I want to add another anchor point really close to this one. And I want to go down to this area of the flap guard, and I want to do the same thing. I'm going to add a point here and a point here. So now press A for the path selection tool, and if I click on this particular anchor point, I'm going to press Shift, and then with the up arrow key, I'm going to just move that to cover my line. So I nudge that twice holding Shift, so that's 20 pixels. And I'm going to do the same thing to this one here. Select it with the path selection tool and Shift up arrow twice. So now if I click on that path again and hide it, you'll see that we no longer have any kind of line here, and we will have that problem gone. So let's do the same exact thing down here, and I'm just going to pan down. And this time I want to select the left stripe, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. So I can come over here and select the Add Anchor Point tool, and I'm going to click here, and I'm going to add another node or anchor point next to it. And let's go down to our line, and right on the inside of it, add 2 anchor points, and nudge this one this time down holding Shift twice, cover that, go to the other one, and press A for my direct selection tool, select that node, and same thing. And we have that problem taken care of now. So I'm going to get out of this full screen for a minute, and let's take a look at our cut list. So once again, I'm going to keep these. I'm going to turn them all back on, but I'm going to shut off the visibility for the one for the whole group and hide this group or collapse it. Now the APU dirt. Let's go ahead and take care of that one real quick. That's an easy one. So I can click up here. Actually, I'm a little off. Let's go over to it. And that's it. All I want to do here is change the dirt, the opacity of that dirt. So if I go into General Weather, Dirt and Streaks, here's my APU vane dirt and my APU dirt. So this right here is the one that I had, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag this opacity way down. Say about, I'm going to go with 21% here. Copy that, and I'm going to go up to this one here, and I'm going to make sure that it's set for about the same. And that's good for me. Now for the APU vane dirt, I don't really want it to be that dirty on the outside. I changed my mind on this, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press E for the eraser tool. And I want to change my brush opacity and my flow, or I can just go to a soft brush. So I'm just going to go ahead and say 35 here. And I just want to clean up my edges here a little bit. I don't want that much dirt on the outside edges, just on the top do I want it. So right there's fine. I don't care so much about the back and the sides, or the back sides. So there we go. I have a nice cleaner edge. And that works for me. So let's go back over to our other image and cut list. We now have that one done, so now let's focus on the hard one here. Now I say the hard one, and if you look here, there are certain sections of the paint that are kind of like, if you know what a skin graph is, to where it's taking them for other areas of the paint. So if you look here, you have this thin green line right here over our tail beacon light, or whatever that is. Again, gentlemen, I'm a painter, not an aircraft parts expert. And if you look up here, our line is just all sorts of discombobulated. But you could also see within here, let me go ahead and zoom into this more. You can see how it's being chopped up. Now trying to fix this, or trying to look at this and decipher what's going on, is a lot harder than fixing it. So I'm just going to get right to fixing it. Now I'm not going to lie to you. When you're dealing with this particular area right here, and these graphs, you're going to see this if you try to do your own wings, and you're going to see it a lot. My wings actually took me a couple of weeks just for the wings. But one of the reasons why we want to zoom in like this, and one of the reasons why we want to actually make a cut list, is so we can zoom right in on it and see where the problems lie. So we can now compare rivet to rivet. We can now look at our rivets, and we can see that our rivets right now are a little off. You can look down the center line here, and you can see that the line here is a little off from center. And to me, this is the only thing I can consider being a wrapper issue. But not really a wrapper issue. It's the fact that you're dealing with aircrafts. All paints have their areas to where they overlap, or they have to go from your wide area to a very narrow area. So you're going to deal with vortex pull, and you're going to deal with skin graph areas like this particular area right here. And the only thing I can tell you is you're going to have to just really be ready to deal with it and to correct that here and there. So what I've done, I'm going to go ahead and go back to this one. Now I'm going to move this out of the way, and I snuck in my original paint. Now I spent a long time on trying to get my tail corrected here. So I'm not even going to try to pretend that this is a simple process. So right now, let me go over to the back of my tail here, and we can see where we are here. I'm going to zoom out to, actually 100 is fine. Here I'm going to zoom out to 100%, and I'm going to drag in my stripes. So I'm going to grab these, and I'm going to bring them in, holding shift, say yes. And now we can see right here to where the line corrections that I had to make. And the only part that we're concerned with is right as it wraps around this really tight complex area right here. So I'm going to drag these down actually. I'm going to bring these down to where I have my tail. And I'm going to put them on the bottom of it. In favor of not making another 30-minute video for you guys to have to sit through boring things, I'm going to just go on to the next stripe here and do the same thing. Now a lot of this really isn't necessary for yourself because our lines matching up exactly are pretty close to impossible. If you have my original paint, you can actually use that texture, bring it on here, and then drop its opacity so you can use it as a tracing guide for your line. So once again, I'm going to do the same thing first to my green stripe. I'm going to go ahead and add 2 anchor points to roughly around this area here. So click, and let's click again up here. Or actually, I'm going to just go ahead now, path selection tool, drag these down. Actually nudge that down a little bit better. And do the same thing with my stripe left. One there, one here, and before I add them other 2, I want to go ahead and drag this into position so I can see exactly where I want to add those points. And maybe nudge that. And let's check it out here. So yeah, I can definitely see where it's a little fat right here, or thinned out. So I do want to correct that. So zoom in here a little bit. Grab that Add Anchor Point tool. Right around here, right around this line here. I'm just going to click and drag just a little bit. And let's move over. Actually going to nudge this one down a little. And do the same. Actually, the top one looks fine. I like the top one, that's not bad. But I do want to grab this Bezier handle and maybe play with it just a little bit. So right there, this right here is really probably the more complicated things that you're going to do with the pen tool in your paints. When you're dealing with a really thin line like this, and it really is a very thin line, you're going to have to deal with that. But the other thing we have to deal with now is, see the brown overlapping our blue area of our teal? We want to kill that. So I'm going to delete these ones that I use as a guide now. I no longer need them. And with my bottom color selected here, I'm just going to go ahead, grab my eraser tool, make sure I have a hard brush, bring that hardness all the way up, and then I'm just going to go ahead and erase that area. Go down to the bottom here and do the same thing. Alright, so once again, I do want to keep things clean as I go, so I'm going to go ahead and tidy some things up here. And go back to my cut list. So I'm going to call this one fixed for now, and you're going to have to, from here on out, I'm not going to go back and forth into FSX and then back in here. It's really too many differences you're going to have to see for yourself. So the last thing we have is the nose, and I really don't even need the cut list for that. I can tell that I just want to drop the front. So a very easy fix now, finally. Now here for the front, I do want to make sure, now my lines matched up perfect inside the sim. So I'm okay with them. I don't have to worry about moving them back and forth. And your paint on the nose, most of the time you're going to have to play with them. So you could load up FSX 10 times and still be fussing with the nose trying to line it up. Luckily mine matched up perfect. So I'm going to now just go ahead and change this. I just want to make this a lot more uniform and wider in the nose. So right now I'm down in the bottom area, which is the left part. So I want to adjust my green stripe first. So I'm going to click on it, and with the path selection tool selected, or direct selection tool selected actually, I'm going to click on this node, or this anchor point. Holding down shift, I'm going to count. So 1, 2, let's say 3, and see how that looks. Well, that's better. I'm still getting thicker. And looking at this with the brown stripe, you might want to hide it so you can get a better idea of what that looks like. So I like that. So I shift click 3 times. I'm going to remember that. Write that down if you can't remember that. And I'm going to now select the other one. Also be sure to remember that you went down here with it and not up, because the up or the right side is actually upside down, so it might be hard to remember that. So select the path. Click on this node, and same thing, holding down shift, 1, 2, 3. And let's take a look at that. I like that much better. I'm going to now go up to the top here, and I'm going to do the same thing, but now I'm in reverse, and I have to keep that in mind, so I'm going to be going away from the white part of the fuselage. So the first one I want to do is the green. I'm going to select it, and with my path selection tool selected, click on the path and this particular anchor point here, and holding down shift 1, 2, 3, and same thing with the brown. 1, 2, 3. And that's it. I'm pretty sure that's done for that. And again, this is going to be something that you're going to have to really bunker down and have patience, because when you're first getting going with these kits or paints, or you're a professional and you've been doing this for years, since the very first FS98 or even before, you may need to go back and forth quite a bit in the beginning. But eventually, you might actually someday get into a paint and never have to do anything at all. No difference. Okay, so it is one of those practice makes perfect things, but at the same time, it's definitely more just to be ready for it every time. So if you're ready for it every time, you're going to be ready for a little disappointment. So don't worry about it. It gets easier as you go, but you know, it's just one of those things you're going to have to expect. Now don't think you're starting all the way over from scratch either. You're not. Like your alpha windows, for instance. You're not going to have to worry about redoing your alphas on 1, 2, and 3. All you're going to be doing now is once again reflattening this, doing the same steps that we mentioned in the last video, and bringing these over to your PSDs and once again saving them out. So go ahead and do that and keep your list, your cut list here. I'm going to go ahead and save this cut list. So I'm going to choose File, Save As, and then within this folder here, I'm just going to call this cut list and save and OK. So that's about it. It's really just a matter of going back and forth between them, and you know, do be sure to save your PSD after all that work. And once you're done, and do be sure that when you are finished this, to do the same thing again, repeat these steps, go back and forth until you have it right. Once it's totally done and you're really happy with this part of the fuselage, then move on to the next step, which will be the engine and the tail. We'll be covering those. And really, from everything that you've already learned up until now, what are we at? Video 21. The steps that we've already learned are pretty much the same. So, as much as I'd like to say from here on out you're on your own, you really kind of are. But I would watch them videos anyway. I'm going to be covering some steps during the tail and the wings and explaining a very cool, easy way to use guides. And these are guides that you're going to make yourself to be able to help find locations like this area of the tail and perfect really complicated pull zones. So until the next time, bye-bye.